All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to our fourth webinar in our 2024-25 Conversations with the Dean series. I'm Penny Bishop, Dean of the BU Wheelock College of Education and Human Development, and I'm so pleased that you've been able to join us today. As some of you know, the focus of the webinar series, the general series, is on recent events and important or hot topics within education. The series is really rooted in our ongoing efforts here in the college to transform systems, particularly those that are inequitable. Each of our discussions focuses on the complexity of the issue at hand, and together we seek to uncover the transformational opportunities to see students and communities thrive. Each month, each month, when I get the pleasure of speaking with top scholars and leaders here at BU Wheelock and in the broader community, I always come away having learned more and having more questions. And so I hope you will today as well. Today we have two extraordinary humans. Welcome, Nneka and Nermeen. I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. Nneka, thank you for joining us all the way from Seattle. We particularly enjoy talking with our external thought partners, so it's a real treat that you've been able to make time today. And let me tell folks a little bit about Nneka. So Nneka Bolden is a digital producer who's helped bring games and websites to life for some of the world's most beloved shows, like Sesame Street and now Lyla in the Loop. Currently, she's a senior digital producer and partnerships director at Mighty Picnic. She has a BA in advertising from Howard University. She's a volunteer at our local library. She considers herself to be a lifelong learner and really, really misses Prince, which is, by the way, something we hold in common. Dr. Nermeen Dashoush is a clinical associate professor of early childhood education here at Boston University's Wheelock College of Education and Human Development. Nermeen is a proud New Yorker. She holds degrees from Columbia and NYU, and she started her career as a public school teacher in New York City before moving into higher education. Dr. Dashoush focuses on using media and technology to bring high-quality STEM education to more children, and we'll certainly be delving into that today. She's the educational co-founder of the ed tech and media company Marco Polo Learning. Her digital resources are used in thousands of classrooms nationwide, and her apps have been downloaded over 10 million times worldwide. Dr. Dashoush has received an Emmy nomination for her work in children's media, and her most recent project was serving as the lead advisor for PBS KIDS' new hit show, Lyla in the Loop. So maybe you're seeing a connection here between our two guests. And also important to know, Nermeen really likes cats. So we always encourage the audience throughout the discussion to share questions that you might have in the Q&A box. We do our best to thread them into our conversation or to handle them at the end of the webinar, and we'll try to do that again today with you. I will say that we've had an awful lot of fun getting ready for today's show, and in fact, many of us were reliving our glory days of watching Zoom or Sesame Street. Some of us were even breaking into song with our theme songs, our favorite theme songs. So I know we're in for a treat today. But before we jump in, we wanted to share a video of you so you could learn more about PBS Kids and Lyla in the Loop in particular. This is where if you're ever presenting anything about technology, something will go wrong. And so we are just going to wait a moment to refresh our screens and get that going. And in the meantime, perhaps we will jump into my first question while we get the tech up and running. So if I could invite Nermeen and Nneka to both turn on their cameras, as I see they have. Hello, welcome. So glad to have you both here. What a treat. I know that you both have multiple hats and tons of projects, and we are, while we're waiting for the clip, making the clip happen, I wonder, Nneka, if you could start us off just by telling us a little bit about the mission of the Lyla in the Loop series. This is an exciting series. Many people may not be familiar with it yet. Tell us a little bit about what it hopes to do and what it means to you.
Definitely. Hi, everyone. So Lyla in the Loop, it's a PBS Kids animated show for kids 4 to 8. It stars Lyla, a dynamic 7-year-old girl, her close-knit family, and this fantastical sidekick, Stu. Um, and they go around throughout the city, creatively problem solving different obstacles or challenges that come up. The show is very funny. And one thing that's very important to me is the representation of the characters in the show. There was a lot of thought um, and tenderness in crafting characters that looked authentic, in crafting a Black family for PBS Kids. And so, as you'll see in further clips, there's a range of skin tones in their family, of hair textures, that we thought was really important to represent on PBS Kids. That is one thing that's really important to me as a Black woman. Also, that young Lyla, this show teaches computational thinking, which Nermeen can talk a little bit more about. But as a Black woman working in tech, this was so important to me and close to my heart. We really try to connect with families and communities with our resources, trying to make sure that we're meeting them where they're at, that we're creating things that are helpful to families and that ultimately aspire the next generation of young BIPOC girls, especially, but for all kids, into this career field.
Thank you so much, Nneka. That's a great intro and sort of helps orient us to what we're about to see and is really inspiring. So let's turn now to see if that clip will work this time.
PBS Kids, well, PBS Kids.
Hi, neighbor.
We carefully create stories specifically with a child's learning and development in mind. We work with early learning experts, play test with kids, and collaborate with award-winning producers to bring the vision to life in a way that's both educational and entertaining. Our shows model foundational skills to help every child become a lifelong learner. Let's look at how STEM skills are thoughtfully modeled in the PBS Kids show, Lyla in the Loop, a show all about creative problem solving, which lays the foundation for computational thinking.
Computational thinking, I think, is like a key to unlock the world.
That's my little engineer.
These thinking skills, there are ways to take a problem and break it down into smaller parts so it's more manageable.
Siblings, we can and must solve these problems together. Starting with Luke's socks. Huh?
And beyond the show, even more learning awaits. With videos, games, and hands-on resources for kids and grown-ups, PBS Kids is your partner in building foundational skills so that kids can explore worlds of possibilities. Now, let's see what learning with PBS Kids looks like in action.
Hey, my name is Kristen Valley, and I am the parent engagement professional at my school. We struggle a little bit with our alarm clocks and missing the bus. So if you get here on time, your name is displayed on the neat wall, and our students love seeing the recognition. Lyla in the Loop, her and her family, they missed the bus. So they came together as a family to try to debug how they can set better morning routines to make it on time.
Now it's time for you four to fix the morning routine.
Work together to come up with a plan to be on time.
After we watched, we sat on the carpet and we discussed ways we can help our families help us get to school on time. Look at all these names that are on the neat wall this week.
Well done, little loops. Right on time.
Very impressive.
Who enjoyed Lyla in the Loop? Me too. Thanks, Lyla.
So fun to see that. I'm really excited to hear from you both about the clip we just watched. I'm hoping you can tell us about the roles that you played in making this happen. And I know, Nermeen, we got to see a little cameo of you in it. How about if you go first for us?
Sure. I think my daughter saw that clip on my laptop, and she sees it sometimes there's a similar one on the PBS Kids app, and she's like, "Mama, what you doing here?" And I think and I think that is the question, like, "Mama, what am I doing there?" Right? Like, what is the role of a professor in education on a television show? And I think knowing what goes on behind the scenes, I think that clarifies it. PBS Kids and really high quality media for young children, it needs to be informed by the same educational philosophy, practices, care for curriculum development, care for learning goals that we put into whether it's a formal or informal learning experience. And that is my role on this show in particular. That is my role across educational media and technology, to make sure that we're really upholding their educational values and standards, and then translating a lot of the research, particularly some of the research we do at BU Wheelock, what does that look like into practice as well. So there, I'm really kind of monitoring the quality and the educational goals of Lyla in the Loop in this situation.
Thank you. It sounds like a challenging and really fun job all at once. So, and Nneka, how about you? What's your particular role?
Yeah, so I'm not only the digital producer, which means I take the show and extend it into the virtual space. So I'm able to create a website, an interactive website that kids can go to, get to know the loops more, and check out 5 games. So we have 5 games that are in development, 3 of which have launched. I'll give you guys a sneak peek into one of our games that'll be launching in early February. And so that's one core part of my job. And the other part is connecting with families, doing outreach, figuring out what kind of resources are needed in different communities across the US, partnering with PBS member stations and librarians to come up with these different types of resources. I've also been able to go to a lot of different community events that our PBS member stations have been putting on. For example, early in my description, my bio, it was mentioned that I'm a Howard University alumna. Go, go Howard. And we partnered with WHUT, which is the PBS station at Howard University in DC. And they wanted to do an inaugural event for families at their huge homecoming event. So we got to participate and have Lyla there, our mascot character. Someone I saw at Q&A in the chat had asked, like, what are families' reactions to Lyla? And it's so overwhelmingly positive at Howard's event, even before the show aired. So we were there the year before it aired, and then we most recently, kids were coming up to me and like, oh, I know her. This was before the show had aired. There was something I think so familiar in the and just the way that the characters were developed, that just attracted families. And we've heard nothing but great things about the representation, how important that is. So there was a lot that we did have to challenge and push for to make sure we're as authentic as possible.
Mm-hmm. That's so helpful. Thank you so much, Nneka. I wonder, Nermeen, if you could talk a little bit about why out of school or informal learning is important in the first place, and how it might help fill in any gaps in classroom learning.
I think we were talking about this when you said it was fun kind of putting this together. We all really reminisce on that PBS Kids show that really made an impact in our lives, or a time we went to a museum, things that we remember. And when we really think about the whole child, we really have to think about the whole child and also the whole day. We're not in school the whole day. We're not in school every day. So a whole child approach also has to consider a whole day approach and a whole week approach and a whole, every component of their life. I think it's even more so important when you're thinking about informal learning when it comes to STEM education, specifically science education, because of the science instruction deficit that we have in our schools, particularly in elementary schools. We know, our teachers are doing a great job doing the best with what they can, but they're also grappling with schedule needs and balancing, fitting in and meeting demands of certain time allocations for certain things. And science continuously gets put on the back burner, with a large majority of our children not getting regular instruction in science. And when they do get regular instruction, it's about a fourth of the time of other subjects that we're seeing. And so this kind of is a way not just to kind of look at all the possibilities that we're learning, but how are we tackling the issue of scientific illiteracy in our population and who has access to consistent science education. And in doing that, we have to tap in informal learning education to kind of help fill in some of those gaps and amplify some of those things, because it's not really, some of the things that we work on are really fun and joyful. But when you kind of boil down to it, computational thinking is our problem solving skills, right? They're really about asking questions about the world around you, about making connections. And if we deprive a certain population of that, or we're seeing a disbalance in access to that, then what does that say about the skills or the tools that we are saying some children are able to cultivate and some children are not able to cultivate within the schools?
Thank you, Nermeen. I really appreciate how you're framing it around an issue of access, and I think it really builds well from Nneka's point about representation earlier. Those both things are so important. If I may just ask a follow-up, we have a question from the audience that is a good one, and that is, how do you, this is for you, Nermeen, how do you ensure that episode content upholds specific educational values? And perhaps you could give us an example of what you look for.
So for any project I work on, one of my kind of terms and conditions, whether it be, I know you mentioned Marco Polo early on, the PBS Kids, I don't come in at the end. I don't come in when it's time to release the show and now we have to have an educator make a comment. I always come in at the beginning and in the beginning of a process. And that really means that an educator needs to be involved in the conception of ideas, in the framing of any scripts or language, because those are ways that we scaffold learning for children. And so even the animation, the illustrations are reviewed by an educator. And so when we think about a whole production process, I think about it the same way that we think about putting together a lesson, how we're delivering it to children, how are we giving them access with multimedia examples. It's the same kind of thing. I think the quality is when an educator is involved early on and in every step of the process. And so that is where I'm involved. I'm involved kind of in I don't take credit for anything, obviously, but I'm involved in almost every step of the process to make sure that it's good for children, that it upholds the learning goals. And there's a lot of things that are nuanced. I go back to Nneka we've had multiple conversations about representation. When we're doing like coloring pages for children, should Lila's skin be colored, right? And those are conversations that the team has expertise in. And then I bring my educational expertise within it as well.
That is so helpful. Thank you. So for our audience, we were teased a little bit earlier by Nneka, who said that we might be able to have a sneak peek of one of the games, and the time has come. So let's have that sneak peek.
Yes, yes. This actually parallels well with what Nermeen was just talking about, because Nermeen and I work very closely on our games. And so what I'm going to show you is a clip of a hair game. That was a concept that we came up with. I hadn't really seen hair games featuring afros and box braids and popular Black American hairstyles. And working with Nermeen, we figured out, well, the wash process, washing your hair, conditioning it, leave-in treatment, combing it, all of these different steps are algorithms. And so with Nermeen's help, we were able to go through and figure out how to best guide kids through this step-by-step process, reinforce the learning with different type of VO. And then I was also looking at it from a representation point of view as well of, oh, I want to see Lyla in a bonnet, which is what I wear at night to protect my hair. I hadn't really seen that, and we have that on the show. And that is something that kids and parents have come up to us, and it has really resonated with them because it's so reflective of their nighttime routines or their hair routines. So in this clip that I'm going to show you is for our hair game. I will say you guys are getting a sneak peek because this clip is a little buggy. So some of the animation isn't final. This happens throughout development. But you'll see in this clip, Lyla goes from wearing her bonnet to the players selecting what hairstyle they want and going through the different steps of the routine. So I'm going to show just a little clip. And again, bear with me, it's the animation is a little off, but I still thought it would be exciting to share. All right. All right, can you guys see that? Yep.
Yes.
Choose the hairstyle I should have. Braids and a curly ponytail. To do my hair, you'll need to follow the steps. First, spray water on my hair. Tap and drag the spray bottle around my hair until it's all wet. Amazing! We're ready for the next step. Grab the leave-in conditioner bottle to add it to my hair next. Leave-in conditioner helps make my hair soft, so I can detangle it. All right! Now rub the leave-in conditioner into my hair. Wow, the leave-in conditioner smells so good! All right! Tap and drag the brush over my hair. All done with brushing. Next, let's part my hair before we braid. Drag the comb on the dotted lines to part my hair. Great job parting! Braiding uses 3 pieces of hair. First, we move an outside piece over the middle piece. Then, now drag the other purple dot over the middle strand of hair. Yes, hair! Wow! Nice!
I can't. I love this game so much. I can't get enough of it. We can't get enough of it. We play. Like Nneka, do you play it too? Do you like sit down and play it? Okay.
Play it all the time. It's really relaxing. I don't
Yeah.
know, when you go and get your hair done, someone's massaging it in, and just the look of peace that's on Lila's face. There's so much attention to detail that we worked with too to make sure we were getting it right and doing a lot of really cool hairstyles that you don't even get to see in the show. So again, we're extending what is being shown on screen and teaching in new and novel ways. I'll also say this game has become so popular as we talk about it with different PBS member stations or with different groups that we partner with, that a lot of groups have wanted to feature this at things going on across the company. And one of the coolest was we worked with Arizona PBS to set up an algorithmic hair braiding station at the Arizona State Fair. And so families, there were dads with their daughters coming, there were different models where they were combing out the hair, they're going step by step, learning how to do braids together. We did some informal testing, and kids who didn't know how to braid beforehand were able to braid afterwards. So we're really proud of this. And I think this just goes to show the power of digital media, the power of representation. And again, it's so cool that this is something, like Nermeen was saying, that's informal learning where, you know, you're having fun, you're playing a game, but there's so much in it that she has crafted with the dialogue, the steps, the visual way that we present the steps that help reinforce computational thinking skills. So we're really proud of this. And this is just one of the many ways that we've worked really closely together to develop different type of materials that really celebrate the Blackness of the Loops family and also just engage all kind of communities.
And I want to add, I don't think we mentioned this. I think we mentioned about Lyla being a black child growing up in a Black family, but I don't think it even hit us until after the show premiered that this was the first Black family on PBS Kids, the first title Black character on PBS Kids. And so that is kind of a groundbreaking milestone, I think, in children's media. I think another thing that could definitely connects back to our work at BU Wheelock is impact and measuring our impact. So when I hear Nneka describing the show and I hear her talking about the games, we're talking in the millions. And I think the numbers are also really staggering. They're really massive when you think about it, right? Sometimes we write an article here and we talk about like our publications and who's reading our publications and how we measure impact here. And when we get numbers around, I think it was 150 million children have streamed a show since February, and I believe, Nneka, correct me if I'm wrong, about 20 million are playing the games. That is a massive amount of reach for young children, even more so that when we look at that, we see kind of the impact and the need for these types of experiences for young children, how quality experiences for young children.
Yeah, when you get to that kind of number, it also comes with this deep sense of responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah,
This idea of reach.
absolutely. Yeah. You know, I think a lot of people when they think about screen time or they think about digital learning for young children, there are a lot of misconceptions and there is a lot of reservations around it, and as they should be, right? We should be asking those questions. What are children learning? Who's behind this? What is the message being sent? And I think when we see the process and the involvement of educators and the involvement of highly talented, caring people like Nneka and the rest of the team behind it, I think then we can kind of show what quality looks like and what it should look like when creating digital experiences for young children. It no way replaces any kind of off-screen experience, but in many ways, like we talked before, it actually fills in the gap for some lack of access to certain quality experiences. I know myself, I grew up on Magic School Bus. I learned English from Mr. Rogers, who my kid did not know who he was when we came up in conversation. And when I tell you, I almost cried. Like it's almost like a family member has been forgotten. I was like, no, 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 no. We're not having that, right? We can forget who great grandfather is, but we're not forgetting who Fred Rogers is in this house, right? These are really meaningful experiences because of how they were crafted to really touch the lives of children.
And it does seem to me that as we think about shows like Lyla and the Loop, and the games and the apps and really related shows too, I suppose. I think it is perhaps a bit of a relief to some of us who are parents to think, oh, actually those are rich sources. Those can be rich sources of education and not just sort of the screen time that we're constantly feeling like, oh, there's too much, this narrative around that I think you mentioned around too much screen time. So that's really helpful. Well, one thing that I'm struck by is that in the backgrounds I provided for both of you, neither of you specialized in a degree around media. And I've noticed a couple of questions that have emerged from a few members of the audience in terms of folks who have a background in education, wondering how they get involved in media. Or can you tell us a little bit about any advice or recommendations you might have for individuals who might be interested in this kind of work in media? Are there paths or programs you'd suggest?
Yeah, I can kick this off. I highly recommend the Kids Media Association. They're a very active nonprofit that many kids media professionals join. I think a few people on my team actually mentor through it. They do panels, I think every month, that you can even access virtually. That is a great place to network. I also just look at your favorite kids shows, see who is producing them, and then go to those websites. There's Fred Rogers producers, there's Sesame Street, there's PBS Kids directly, are great places, I would say, to start. And reaching out to people on LinkedIn. Honestly, we're such a enthusiastic small group. There have been a few connections I've made with people who just cold messaged me. And so, yeah, those are some of the starting places I would recommend.
That's so helpful, Nneka. Thank you. Nermeen, did you have anything to add?
I think we talk about this a lot kind of at PBS Kids, because part of their framework is also like career development and showing children the possibilities. And I wrote an article for PBS saying that when I was growing up, I think I only knew like 5 careers. And we're a family of 4 children. And I think we got 4 out of those 5 growing up. Like my sister's a doctor, I'm a teacher, my brother's a lawyer. And it's like, we don't really know what the careers are. And I don't think we even know some of kind of the career possibilities. I would say looking at the skills. So the skills that transfer over. So we have I have a degree in education, but I also have a specific degree also in STEM education. So really kind of identifying where production companies, different aspects of children's media are able to fulfill some of that need where you can do advising work for them. So developing kind of a niche within that specific advising work. But I would say a degree in education, I never use the word just is in the classroom, right? No, right? It's a beautiful entry point into the classroom. And if you're in the classroom, there's no just about it. But it also, the skills are transferable into other areas as well. So having a degree in education, I was able to transfer some of those foundational skills around curriculum development, ways that we should be talking to children, the development of young children, how to scaffold learning, all of that transfers into my work. It's just, it's kind of the same thing, but it's just a different way of communicating learning to young children. That being said, we are also launching, is it okay to tell? This has been a whole thing of previews. We're also launching a master's degree at Boston University in educational media and technology, really focused on the educator, really focused on making sure that the educator that's on the team is somebody who is informed both in the children's learning, curriculum development and design, but also understands the industry and is able to navigate the industry and was very specific to that industry. And that's hopefully launching, I want to cross my fingers, I say that, hopefully launching fall 2025 or 2026, where we're looking into that. But those are the types of degrees that I think people should be really exploring if they were really want to enter that specific field.
Thank you both. This is a day of sneak peeks. I love it. That's great. Nneka, you mentioned you used the term informal learning earlier, and I was thinking about informal learning, and then we've also been talking about digital learning, and I was thinking some of our viewers may not necessarily differentiate or know how one term differentiates from another, or is one an umbrella. But we know that education and learning happens everywhere we are. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you make sense of those terms and how we're using them today?
Yeah, I would say I mostly talk about it from the digital perspective. This is digital media. It's the easiest way for me to talk about it. Kids also understand it when you're just like, here's a game or a website. And I think parents, when I'm talking to them about the resources that we have, I like to use more terms like this is a way to extend the learning that's on the series. This is a way to keep engaging casually with the curriculum of the series. I think those are some ways that I differentiate. Nermeen, would you agree with that?
So the idea for informal learning, yes, I'm agreeing. I'm definitely agreeing with you, Nneka. I would never even disagree with you. Maybe if you're wrong, I still would disagree. That's my girl. I'm not going to be like, no, you're wrong. But she's brilliant, so she's never wrong. So I don't have to be put in that situation. But yes, informal learning, I think of kind of encompasses a lot of experiences that happens outside of formal school settings. And that could be a lot of different things, including digital media. In many ways, I talked about the transferability of some of the skills. Like if we plan curriculum, we plan learning goals for a child, but also the delivery is a little bit different. So you have to start thinking about, like, when we design spaces, we designing installations in museums. If you've ever been to a museum, there's something called the ping pong effect, where a child is going one way, another, the other, and instead of and that's their natural urge, and that's beautiful for them to kind of ping pong around the room. But you have to consider that when you're designing something for a child. How are they able to learn while they're still ping ponging? How is the environment teaching them? And so there's different aspects of it. Includes, anything that is outside of a formal school setting. I put it within informal learning, and they're really kind of thinking about how then does the technology or the media or the environment do the teaching for you then.
Mhm, mhm. That's a really helpful way to think about it, Nermeen. Thank you. Um, I was struck by the ping-ponging children. Any of us who have had children probably are familiar with that feeling, whether it's in our own house or in the museum. And I also know that's somewhat developmental in terms of where kids are and the ages that you're. And one of our guests today asked a question about the age range. So I'm just going to pose that for you. Is this part of the pre-K curriculum portfolio on PBS Kids, or are you aiming for early elementary, hoping for aspirational co-watching? How are you addressing the differences in developmental levels between 4-year-olds and 8-year-olds?
So there's definitely a learning framework that's put forward by PBS Kids that aligns to a lot of our educational goals as well. Particularly, this was around computational thinking and computational thinking skills, which are across multiple ages. And so I I don't think of what we're teaching the children in terms of, content or facts. I think about what we're modeling in terms of skills. And that is embedded in multiple curriculums, in multiple standards, and across multiple ages. Within the show, we have variation in terms of the characters, actually, in terms of their ages. We have Luke, who is 5 years old, Nneka. Luke is 4 or 5. He might have had a birthday. I don't know. Luke is 5. Lyla herself, I think, is 7. And then she has older siblings, more kind of the tweens. And so the characters on the show kind of help us do that scaffolding and that differentiation in terms of some of the learning needs for young children, without attributing a certain age to a certain need. We know there's a wide developmental range for young children. Even if you put all 5-year-olds in the room together, well, we call that kindergarten. Their variation is and should be very, very wide in terms of their skills. But the characters on the show are also varied in terms of age, and so they model computational thinking in very different ways on the show as well, to kind of reflect, again, some of the children that are watching and some of their needs.
I would add on, if I may, that extends also into the resources that we're creating for kids and families. We talked about, Nermeen was mentioning how important it is to focus on the place that you're at and kind of cater to that. We have been working on developing installations for a museum. What would that look like? How would that work for kids and families with mixed ages and different types of caregivers? We've thought about resources that families can take with them on the subway or on the bus as they're on the go. For those moments during travel when you just need 5 minutes, there's an opportunity that you can play a quick game with your kids, no materials needed. We think about the after school space, and with young people who are working in the after school centers, how can we help them understand how to teach kids and have fun games for them? We also have resources for specifically being at the library. There's a lot of books around. It's a little bit more of a quiet space. Like, we've been thinking about all these different environments and how to really meet communities when they're at these spaces. I also just wanted to mention, I think someone mentioned co-playing and co-viewing. That's also really important for our games and even in play testing. So all of our games, we do play test with families where we have them sit down, we have different questions that we ask them. We watch the kids play, and I often see younger kids on the devices and an older sibling looking over like, what's going on? Oh, let me help you. And next thing you know, the older sibling has them. But that's an opportunity for us to engage the full family and keep them all really interested. We even have been thinking about co-playing with parents or grandparents or older guardians to play with their kids. So one of our games takes place in a kitchen. We talked a lot with families about sharing stories about food and recipes to be able to connect them together. So we hope that a lot of our games are approachable in this way, because we do want that co-playing and co-viewing. We have a lot of multiplayer games as well. So these are all things that we consider in the media that we're creating surrounding the series.
That is so helpful to know. And as someone who's not in your industry, I didn't really know that co-viewing or co-playing was a thing. It makes perfect sense the way you describe it. And it also tells me now why my husband and I would be like we got a little more into the kids shows than the kids did, or they'd outgrow them, and we'd still be like, "Don't you want to watch Franklin? Come on," like whatever it was. We were a little bit more into it than they were after they grew up. So now I have an explanation for that. Next question is, I'd love to pose to Nermeen. We've talked a lot about how you've contributed to the media space. I wonder how you can talk a little bit about how this collaborative work that you do with PBS and with colleagues like Nneka influence your teaching and your scholarship here at BU Wheelock.
Yeah, that's a great question. I do work there, right? Yeah, you're like,
And we're glad about that.
I mean, you work for us. I think this is first and foremost, like first of all, I think BU Wheelock really values service as well, and service to the community. My litmus test is something that somebody said within a panel, that if BU Wheelock disappears tomorrow, who will miss us? And so our work cannot just be done within our within our college, and we're just kind of talking to each other. So some of it is really around the dissemination of the work of some of my research and the research of other scholars within BU Wheelock as well. We also have ongoing research projects within within BU Wheelock that I'm involved with, that specifically help unpack some of the ways that we are really seeing if these shows have the impact that we say they do on children's learning, helping us understand children's learning, and then also helping us guide the next iteration of some of the creations of shows like this. We have one project where one of the characters on the show is really analogous to AI. And when you're thinking about the communication with that character, we're thinking about how do children communicate with AI agents. And some of the research that we're doing here at Wheelock is really trying to unpack how do children speak to AI agents, and how do they code switch from speaking to an adult, maybe a familiar adult, using some of language that might be more culturally relevant to them, and are they completely switching over when they're speaking to something like AI? This comes down all of, I think this might be kind of like some high level words and vocabulary, but I think everybody needs to start thinking about, like, when's the last time they got into a fight with Alexa or Siri, right? Because they don't understand them. I know when I ask her to speak, to play a song that's from my language, I have to change and have the wrong accent in order for her to understand me, right? And there's that impact around who is technology created for, that we are unpacking in some of that research. So I think it's kind of like this this loop, basically, that we're trying to really create research here that impacts the practice then goes back and impacts the research at BU Wheelock. We're also trying to tackle our teacher education as well. We want to make sure that one of the reasons that teachers are not teaching science continuously, obviously because of the time restrictions as well, but because they don't feel like they are prepared to teach science and teacher education programs. They're more likely to spend more time on other subjects in teacher education programs. So some of the work we're doing here is making sure that we have very specific classes, courses allocated to the teaching of STEM, and unpacking how to teach STEM, but also why this is important to teach STEM from an equity lens as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, you just said so many things that I want to follow up on: the code switching, the AI, the cultural relevance. I'd like to continue this conversation for the rest of the day. And sadly, we are running out of time, which is a bummer, but also I just want to thank you both so much for the really interesting insights into your worlds, and the ways that those are reflected in PBS Kids and Lyla in the Loop, and in sort of the aspirations that we have for children and families. So really appreciate your time so much. I would also like to thank our audience, for your participation. I've learned that a number of you are steady participants here, that you keep coming back, and we love that. If you'd like to learn more about BU Wheelock, perhaps about some of our research centers, or exploring the idea of an advanced degree, we've got some resources for you here that we're sharing. And finally, I hope to see you next month for our next Conversations with the Dean webinar. That one is all about hope and planning for the future. It's called Using My CAP to Establish Hope and planning for the future. And we'll learn how educators are integrating My Career and Academic Plan, or MyCap, activities in school settings to support positive youth development. MyCap enables students to define their career and life goals based on their unique patterns of interests, skills, and values. And you'll learn, and it may come as a surprise to you, I don't know, maybe it won't, that research shows that that assessment can be given as early as early childhood. So that you can actually assess some of this in early childhood, rather, not that it's given, but that you can assess it. So lots to explore there. We're going to have a lot of fun diving into that as well. And so I want to thank you again for coming and hope to see you next month. Bye-bye.